Hi guys, I'm Katie Ely, and I'm so glad you've joined me for this session of how to get your children to clean their rooms using Rubric Rules. In this session, I want to talk to you about how to get your kids to clean their rooms, help around the house, and manage money wisely. I'll be teaching out of my book, How to Get Your Children to Clean Their Rooms Using Rubric Rules, a teacher's strategy. But before I get into exactly how to get your children to clean their room, you need to understand why your children need to clean their room. Because unless you comprehend the enormous value of getting your children to help around the house, you won't be committed to this method or any other. First, having a clean, organized room is not the objective here. That's a happy byproduct, but that's not the objective. This is about training our children in the way they should go, so when they are old, they won't depart from it. This is about training your children to have a good work ethic. It's about training your children to help others. It's about training your children that in life, you just got to do stuff you don't want to do, and you need to do it with a good attitude. It's all about building character. The first thing that having your children help around the house will do is help develop a good work ethic. If you want your children to be successful, teach them to work. There's no bigger contributor to success than hard work. God tells us in Proverbs that the hard worker prospers, but the lazy man ends in poverty. We want to teach our children how to be successful using God's principles, and hard work is definitely one of God's ways to success. The second thing that having your children help around the house will do is to teach them to be kind and to help others. One of the most valuable character traits in a child of God is the trait of helping others. Helping others is the kind thing to do. It is not nice to make someone else do all the work. It's rude and selfish. It's rude to expect your mother or father to do all the work, and it's rude to expect future roommates, co-workers, and spouses do all the work. Our children need to learn that everyone has to do their part. Otherwise, they grow up selfish, spoiled, and with a sense of entitlement. The third thing that helping around the house will teach your children is that in life, you just have to do things you don't want to do. This is a must-learn life lesson in order to be prepared for the real world. As an adult, the reality of your day is constantly doing things you'd rather not do. You have to get up, go to work, feed the kids, mow the lawn, and maybe attend a parenting class. Most of us would much rather sit on the couch and watch TV. But as responsible adults, we just can't do that. We need to teach our kids that it doesn't matter if they feel like helping or not. It's the right thing to do. If you don't teach them they have to do things they don't want to do, what happens when they go to school and they have a boring or difficult assignment? What happens when they get a job and they don't want to get up and go? It's not a fun lesson to learn, but not learning it will make for a very dysfunctional adulthood. Having your children help around the house is also developing their self-control. One of the definitions of self-control is doing the right thing whether you feel like it or not. Remember, in order to develop self-control, it needs to be practiced. Having your children help around the house, even when they don't want to, develops their self-control. And remember, self-control is the number one virtue to develop, because without self-control, you can't exhibit the other virtues. The last reason to have your children help around the house is that you need to train them how to do domestic skills. Knowing how to do laundry and mop the floor is not instinctive. When my sons went off to college, they were shocked by all the girls they met who had no clue how to do laundry. So think about all the skills needed to run a household, and then make sure your children have had enough experience and practice that they could do them all on their own. Okay, that's why we need to have our children help around the house. I tell you this because I don't want you to feel guilty about having your kids help out. For some reason, today's culture seems to think that children shouldn't have to do anything except for be entertained or have fun. And while I think they should definitely have time to play and be kids, there's time to do both. Cut out the amount of time they watch TV and play video games, and you'll find there's time for chores. So don't feel guilty about making your children help around the house. Chores are good for them. You're developing the character traits of hard work, helpfulness, and consideration. The second component to this rubric cleaning method is the money management system that goes along with it. This money management system teaches the character trait of fiscal responsibility, because part of being a responsible, self-reliant adult is knowing how to manage money wisely. With the rubric rules, children have to earn their allowance, and the better job they do, the more money they can earn. The purpose of this money management system is to train our children how to budget and spend money wisely. We're going to train our children that when they get paid, they never spend all of it. Instead, they divide their pay into different categories such as giving, saving, and spending. This is the basics of budgeting. So giving them an earned allowance is not so they can buy a bunch of stuff. The purpose of giving our children earned allowance is to train them how to manage money wisely. With the rubric rules, children have to divide up their earned allowance into 4 categories. They put the money for each category into 4 different containers, such as peanut butter jars. The first category is give. We want to train our children to tithe, which means to give 10% of their pay to their church. Malachi 3:8-10 says, "Will a mere mortal rob God? Yet you rob me. But you ask, how are we robbing you? In tithes and offerings. You are under a curse, your whole nation, because you are robbing me. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it." We want to teach our children that not only should God be first in our lives, but God should be first in our finances as well. Tithing teaches children to trust God with their money. Explain to your children how the church uses their tithe, like paying for the pastor's salaries, or paying for the church building, or helping people in need. In other words, their tithe will help advance the kingdom of God. The second category is short-term savings. For adults, the short-term savings is used for emergencies, such as when the car breaks down or if you have a medical emergency. But for children, they can use their short-term savings for saving for a more expensive toy or item. We're just trying to get them into a lifetime habit of saving in their short-term category. The third category is to put 20% of their pay into long-term savings. For adults, this is the category where you save for your retirement. For your children, this is money to be used when they're much older and need it to buy a car or go to college. So for the long-term savings, you're going to need to open a bank account for your child. And about once a month, take the money from this container and put it into the bank. You'll be amazed at how much money they'll accumulate if you start this when they're young. Finally, the last category is the spend category. After giving and saving first, there's only 50% left to spend. But that's okay. We're training our children that they always have to put a portion of their pay towards tithing and saving first. But what if 50% is not enough money to buy what they want? Well, they have 2 options. They can delay gratification and save up for it, which is a great lesson to learn. Or they can get a job, like raking leaves or babysitting, which is another great lesson to learn. If you need ideas on how kids can make money, go to my website, theteachermom.tips, and I've got a list of 30 ways for kids to make money. The final part of this money management system is to train your children how to spend wisely. That means that parents don't buy their kids anything but necessities. The children are in charge of buying all of their wants, like movies, games, or toys. This not only gives children practice in learning to spend wisely, it adds to their motivation for cleaning. If they ever want to have the cool things they desire, they had better clean well and on time. One of the best ways I've found to get kids to clean their rooms is with a method called Rubric Rules. I created these Rubric Rules when my boys were 12. The reason I created them in the first place is because my boys didn't know how to clean their rooms, and they didn't care. Whenever I would tell them to clean their rooms, they would do such a half-hearted, sloppy job, and I had to nag them to even get them to do that. Their definition of clean was not my definition of clean. So that's when I thought about rubrics. Basically, a rubric is a worksheet that teachers use in the classroom to break a large assignment into several smaller tasks. Then each individual task is graded. Now, normally, teachers use rubrics to grade a large assignment, such as a research paper. But I thought a rubric would be perfect to break down the assignment of cleaning. So I made a rubric, trained my boys how to use it, and then I was amazed. Their rooms were so clean. They were cleaner than if I would have cleaned it. It worked so well that I made a rubric for their bathrooms, the game room, and the hallway and stairs. My boys used the rubric to clean the entire upstairs every single week until they graduated high school. It worked so well, my husband said, "Holy cow, you've got to copyright this and write a book." Let me show you what a rubric is. This is a basic bedroom rubric. This particular one is for older kids who can read, but there's also rubrics with pictures for younger kids. You'll notice that the top part has a list of all the specific tasks that have to do. So the children have to do each task, check it off, and then grade their own work with an A, B, C, or D. Younger children can grade with a happy or sad face. When all the tasks are completed, the rooms must be inspected by the parent. The parent also grades each specific task on the rubric. Allowance and consequences are then tied to the parent's grades of the room. On all of the rubric is the task, clean with a good attitude. The Bible tells us in Philippians 2:14, do everything without complaining and arguing. We want to train our children that they need to have a good attitude, even when they're doing stuff they don't want to do. So with the rubric rules, the parent grades their attitude, and again, their allowance and consequences are tied to the parent grades. On the bottom of each rubric are 9 rubric rules. These rules clearly lay out all the rules of cleaning their rooms. There are rules of when it must be completed and what the consequence will be for not finishing on time. It also states how much money they could earn for a job well done. It's very specific. There are 26 different kinds of rubrics in the book. There are bedroom rubrics, bathroom rubrics, game room and playroom rubrics. There's even a laundry rubric and deep cleaning rubrics. So let's get more specific about how to do this. Before you ever hand your child a rubric, you have to fill out all the blanks on the rubric rules. So let's look at each rubric rule. Rule number 1. Room must be cleaned by blank time on blank day. This is where you write in the specific time and day the room must be cleaned. My boys' deadline was always noon on Saturdays. But if they wanted to go to a party on Friday night or sleep late on Saturday, they would start cleaning their room Thursday night and finish up Friday after school, as long as it was done and inspected before Saturday noon. The main reason to have a deadline is so that you can take away all the fun stuff until they get their room clean. If you don't have a deadline, what if Sunday night comes and they still haven't cleaned their rooms? There's not a lot you can do at that point. With the rubric rules, you work first and have fun later. Another great lesson to learn. With the rubric rules, your children don't come out of their room until their room is clean. They don't watch TV or play video games. They don't go anywhere or do anything fun until the room is clean. That's why you want to have a deadline. Rule number 2, the total amount of earned allowance is blank. This is where you write down how much earned allowance your child could earn each week. You can give them whatever you want, but a good rule of thumb is to give them approximately half their age. So if you have an 8-year-old, give them $4 a week. Of course, you want to give them whatever you can realistically afford, but I do want to caution you to start low. You can always increase their allowance if you find it's not enough, but it's hard to reduce it once given. Rule number 3, each task is worth blank. This is where you write down how much each task is worth. Since you'll be grading each individual task on the list will be worth a certain amount of money. To figure it out, just take the total allowance and divide it by the total number of tasks. So if you're planning on giving $5 of allowance per week and there are 10 tasks on the rubric, you take $5 divided by 10 equal 50 cents. Each task is worth 50 cents. Now, if you're having your child do 2 rubrics, such as they have to clean both their bedroom and their bathroom, be sure to add the total task on both rubrics. For instance, if there are 10 tasks on their bedroom rubric and 10 tasks on their bathroom rubric, the total number of tasks is 20. So if you were giving them $5 a week divided by 20 tasks, that would equal 25 cents per task. Oh, and make sure the amount of allowance you give divides evenly with the number of tasks on the rubric you choose. For instance, suppose you decide to give your 4-year-old $2 a week, and you choose an easy rubric that only has 6 tasks. Well, $2 divided by 6 doesn't divide evenly. It's like 0.333. It'd be a whole lot easier just to give your 4-year-old either $1.80 or $2.40 a week, because those numbers divide evenly by 6. I've tried to make most rubrics have 10 tasks so it's easier to divide. But don't worry, there are lots of samples in the book to copy. Rule number 4, the pay scale. The pay scale refers to how much each grade is worth. So after you've determined how much money each task is worth, formulate a pay scale. For instance, an A is worth the full amount of the task. Each successive grade will be worth a little less. For example, if each task is worth 50 cents, then an A is worth 50 cents. But a B is only worth 40 cents, and a C is worth 30 cents, and a D is worth only 15 cents. An F is worth 0. So you see, the better job they do, the more money they'll make. Rule number 5, grades and allowance are based on the first inspection. That means the first time you go to inspect your child's room, that's when you grade them. Even though they have to redo any sloppy or missed task before they can come out of their room, their earned allowance and consequence is only tied to the first inspection. That motivates them to do it right the first time. Rule number 6, parent grades of D or F will result in the consequence or loss of the privilege for the entire week. So if your child gets a D or F on any specific task, they lose their privilege for an entire week. And they don't get their privilege back until after their next inspection. And this includes the grade on their attitude. We're training our children to strive for excellence, not mediocrity. Rule number 7, if room is not clean on time, the child will get no allowance and will lose the privilege for the entire week. So if your deadline is 12 o'clock noon and they don't finish until 12:15, they don't get any allowance and they lose their privilege for an entire week. And they still have to finish cleaning their room. The rule is it has to be done on time. Now, if you think that's really harsh, let me explain my reasoning. They may lose their allowance and privilege once or twice, but then it probably won't happen again. If you consistently follow these rules exactly, they will meet their deadline. But if you give in and say, well, you're only 15 minutes late, all right, I'll still give you an allowance. Well, then next week, expect them to be 30 minutes late, and then the next week, 45 minutes late. The more you give in, the more they won't follow the rules. Children will rise to your expectations, especially if they have to. Besides, having a deadline will teach them good time management. Rule number 8, even if the deadline is missed, child may not leave his room until the room is clean. This is an important rule because Let's say the child doesn't clean the room because, well, he doesn't want to. He figures he'll just wait until the deadline is over, and then he plans to play video games for the rest of the day. No, the rule is you cannot leave the room until it's done. Because if they don't clean their room, that's just defiant behavior. They are blatantly defying your rules. Why would you reward them by allowing them to come out and have fun? Also, why would they ever clean if they can just wait out the deadline? Now, if they do have to stay in their room to finish cleaning after the deadline, be sure to take everything fun out of their room. Take out their phone, their laptop, their tablets, their electronics. Anything they could enjoy playing with, take it out. They can have it back as soon as the room is cleaned and inspected. Now, hopefully, after listening to Session 5, your child doesn't have a TV, computer, or video games in their room. But if they do, at least take out the cords or something that make them work. Don't allow them to sit in their rooms and play video games and not clean. Finally, rule number 9. The privilege to be lost is blank. This is where you write down the privilege your child will lose if their room is not cleaned correctly or on time. They need to know if they choose to disobey the rubric rules, then they choose to lose their favorite privilege. It'll be their choice. Now, I know this sounds like a lot of rules, but here's the thing. It's the same rules every week until your child graduates from high school. Once they do these for a few times, it'll be easy. Okay, those are the rules. Now let's look at the top part of the rubric. Basically, your child has to do each task, check it off, and then grade their own work. The reason we want our children to grade their own work is to get them to stop and honestly evaluate the quality of their work. And yes, they have to grade their own attitude too. I have a friend who has shall we call her, a strong-willed daughter, who was doing these rubrics, and one day when she was having her daughter clean her room, she asked her daughter, "How would you grade your attitude right now?" And her daughter answered, "I'd give it an F." Having your children grade themselves forces them to reflect on how they did. When your child has finished the rubric, it's time for inspection. Go to their room and grade each one of their tasks with letter grades or a happy or sad face. Then refer to the pay scale on the bottom of the rubrics and write down how much money they get on each task. Total it up, and that's their earned allowance. Then have your children divide their pay into the 4 jars of giving, short-term savings, long-term savings, and spending. Let me warn you up front, this part is initially going to take a lot of time. Your kids are going to have to figure out the percentages and then count out the correct amount of change to put in each jar. But remember, the purpose of all of this is to train our children. Did you know that counting change is an excellent technique to teach kids to add in their heads? By having your children figure out the percentages and count out the change on a weekly basis, it will be excellent practice for their math skills. And when their jars are full of change, they can exchange the coins for dollars. One of the keys to making these rubric rules successful lies in the training. For the first couple of weeks, you've got to be in their room with them, training them exactly how you expect them to do each and every task. Initially, this is going to take a lot of your time, but think long term. Once they know exactly how to do it, for the next 6, 8, 10 years, they'll be able to do it on their own. Your only job will be to inspect and dole out the allowance. Before you begin, let me give you a couple of helpful hints. Number 1, the first hint is to get rid of excessive stuff. If your child's room is crammed full of stuff, it can be overwhelming to a child. So before you ever start this method, I would suggest that you help your child go through all of their stuff and get rid of any clothes or toys they don't use anymore. Then, if they still have too many toys, here's a cool solution. Get large, clear trash bags and put half or more of their toys in the bags. Label the bags toys number 1, toys number 2, etc. Then put those bags in the attic or garage, and every week or so, rotate the bags out. Not only will this cut the clutter in half, but it'll actually be better for children. It's been shown that children focus and play better when there are fewer toys out. Another great tip is if you have 2 or more children who have to clean a common area like a bathroom or game room, don't have them clean the same room together. I learned this firsthand with my sons. When I first started doing these rubrics, my boys had to clean their own bedroom and bathroom, and they both had to clean the game room and the hallway and stairs together. But that did not work out well. The reason is because if a task wasn't done, they would each blame the other one for not doing it. It was a lot easier just to assign them an entire room to clean all by themselves. Then if it wasn't done right, I knew exactly whose responsibility it was. So one week, Hunter would have to clean the game room while Skylar would vacuum and dust the hallway and stairs. Then the next week, they switched. And by rotating the rooms each week, it made it fair. The same concept can be applied if 2 or more children share a bedroom. You might have one clean the bathroom and the other clean the bedroom, and then the next week, switch. Or you might give one child task 1 through 5 and the other child task 6 through 10. Just make sure that each child has their own individual task, so they can't blame anyone if it's not done right. And here's another tip. Don't go to inspect their room until you've looked at the rubric carefully. Make sure each task is checked off and graded by the child. And if they give themselves a B or lower on any particular task, make them go back and redo it before you ever go to inspect. If even they don't think they did a very good job, you won't either. We're trying to train them to do excellent work. So, that's basically how you use the Rubric Rules method. To find out all the details, be sure to read the book, How to Get Your Children to Clean Their Rooms Using Rubric Rules. And I'd love for you to share your experience with the Rubric Rules on my website, theteachermom.tips. Thanks so much for watching.